Okay, I have pressed the button. I think that we are about ready to go here. All right, what is up, everybody? Happy Friday.
Hello, everyone.
I don't even know what camera I'm looking at right now. Been teaching all day long. Happy Friday and happy Easter coming up here pretty soon. Hope that y'all have been doing well. And yeah, Mr. Evans is here joining us today, and the topic for this McKamie Masterclass is going to be vibrato. And this was an idea brought up by Mr. Evans. So thank you, Mr. Evans, for giving us such a good topic to discuss today.
I'm excited to talk about it. Vibrato is very, very, very special and very unique, and could be the easiest thing that we do, but also could be the hardest thing that we do. So I'm excited.
Yeah. Great. So with when we talk about vibrato, there are a lot of things that come to mind. There are things as far as the technical side. How do we do vibrato? You know, how do we make that happen on all of our fingers? What is vibrato? How do we define it as far as trying to explain it or trying to use it in our music? And then finally, and arguably most importantly, how we can use that in our music to enhance the musical ideas and phrases and all the wonderful things that make string music so wonderful.
Because, since you brought it up, you specified string music. Not all instruments can do vibrato. And so we're kind of unique in that way. I had a piano professor once who said piano was the best instrument ever because it's the only instrument that you can play more than three notes on at a time. And so we argued a little bit, and we were like, but we could hit all of our strings at once, technically. And he was like, yeah, but that's not what I mean. Like, he wanted you to sustain a tetrachord kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I argued back, well, I can vibrate my pitches. No matter what you do on the piano, it's going to be one solid pitch, and vibrato is like our friend. So.
Very true. Now, having to throw out my I've been in music school for way too long card, if you were back about 200 years ago, if you had a clavichord, I believe is what it is called, you could touch the key and then you could shake left and right, and that would create vibrato. However, this was not really a string instrument. It was hitting other metal pieces, which is why you could do that. And if I recall correctly, it's called the Bobung. That's the vibrato. That was the German. This is what you can look forward to, everybody, when you become a music nerd. All this wonderful information that is.
I mean, I think it's great learning about all the different kinds of instruments.
Yeah. But yeah, just like you were saying, the vibrato is something that is unique to mostly string instruments, and especially with the non-fretted string instruments. So, you know, we've got violin, viola, cello, double bass, but vibrato also extends very meaningfully into winds, brass, vocalists, all these kinds of things. So pianists are one of the largest group that are really left out of this. Pianists.
Percussion.
Yeah, percussion. But they do get
Clarinetists.
the self-harmony thing. So that is very valuable.
Yeah. They get a fair trade. It's fine.
Yeah.
They're not missing it necessarily.
Okay, well, we're getting off too much to talk about pianos all day. I'll do that all the time. We have a couple videos that we want to show you guys. Hopefully, YouTube, please don't get mad at us and copyright strike us. Please don't. But we want to show you some things about kind of just explain and set up what vibrato is. So when we are vibrating on our instruments, we are starting from a center hold of our pitch, and then we are altering our hand movement, our arm and hand movement, which then moves our finger and it changes the pitch out of tune. Now, there are different schools of thought. I have been taught many things. My current school of thought that I really like is the idea of starting in tune and then pulling back and then coming back to the in tune position. And if you do that motion, it gives you a little bit of forward and it gives you a little bit of backwards, and it's even. But if you think about it and if you practice it as a back and in, that's what creates the vibrato. How about you? What have you been studying most recently for that idea?
I agree with you that we should start from your normal hand position, your normal hand frame, and go back from there. I think a lot of students, when I was a student, I definitely did it. Maybe I even still do it now sometimes. I think a lot of students think that vibrato is any kind of movement in any direction. It has to be from a stationary position and then relax your hand back. And it's kind of like your hand is bobbing back and forth this way. It's a little different for everybody, of course, and you have to learn your special way of maneuvering it. But an important factor is you're not coming forward. Because if your fingers are at the correct angle while we're playing, coming forward would mean that your nails are going to get in the way. And so we don't want this kind of vibrato, right? So yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. Now it's interesting, when you were doing that, when I was showing my vibrato, I was doing this kind of thing because I come from a school that uses both wrist and arm vibrato, but talks a lot about arm vibrato motion as far as teaching it. I noticed when you were doing it just now, you were really focused on that wrist motion of going backwards. So I think that's interesting how we both agreed, but we were doing different teaching mechanics or different.
Because the goal is the same. The process of how to get there might be different, I think, for everybody, depending on the anatomy. However, to further make it more interesting, yes, I demonstrated this, and I teach this first, because I think the important thing is to learn how to be loose here. But I use arm vibrato. I'm more comfortable with it. I'm very uncomfortable using wrist vibrato for myself on violin. On viola, it's a different story, but it's because it's such a bigger instrument. For myself, I used arm, and I like arm, and I feel most comfortable with it. So, yeah. The goal, though, is the same, to be relaxed, backward motion.
Yeah, agree. Well, cool. Well, on that note, let's go ahead and check out a video here that is a really neat slow motion of how a violinist, when they're playing I think it's an E. There we go. Yeah, they're playing a first finger E on the D string, and it's the sound is a little garbled just because of the nature of slowing it down so much. But we get to see not only the slow motion vibrato in the hand, but we also get to see what the pitch looks like and how it oscillates back and forth. So let's check this out.
Wait, can you go back to just before where she started the vibrato again?
Yeah. Like right here?
Sure. Ooh, I was curious to see which direction she started in. Did you notice?
Oh, I was totally looking at the
Yeah.
little thing. I wasn't looking at her finger.
Look at her finger.
She did a little forward thing first.
Yeah.
What?
Interesting. But anyway, so the pitch. It's also good to note that it's so cool to see this graph, because what is vibrato for us? It's altering the pure pitch. It's creating a wave in the pitch. So here we get to see the literal wave that she's creating. Yeah.
No, it's definitely cool. And just like you were saying, even though we caught a little bit of a McKamie Masterclass foul there on the front motion, it's really interesting to see how people move and how, just like you said, there's different means to get to the same end as far as attaining vibrato. Yeah. Now, while I chose this video not for the left-hand technique, more for the interesting infograph, well, actually, before we move on, let's also check out this third finger, because they also have... And before we watch this, just a real quick little discussion here. Fingers have different vibrato feels, and okay, feels maybe is not the word, but intensities and colors, and you, depending on the note that you're playing, if it's a powerful note, you don't necessarily want to always be using your fourth finger. You might want to shift up to use your second finger because it's a more powerful note, and sometimes the motion can be a little bit different, wouldn't you say?
Unless you're Hilary Hahn.
Unless you're Hilary Hahn. Very good point.
Hilary Hahn's quite literally the only one who uses fourth finger vibrato all the time, and it's like, it could be any of her fingers.
Yes.
That's the goal.
That is the goal.
But yes, I think it's also important to note, like, the anatomy of your hands is very important. For example, I learned after a long struggle of not understanding it, that with my own hands, my first three fingers, I think, are kind of equally strong. They all have like a similar length, and the way that they operate when I'm moving is quite similar. My pinky is clearly, of the four fingers, less strong. So when I do vibrato, it's like a different approach. I definitely don't have a fourth finger wrist vibrato. There's no such thing for me. I have to use arm kind of thing. So yeah, I think it's good to learn your individual fingers, how they're going to move, and then the different sounds that they can produce, where it's going to help you, where it could hinder you.
Yeah, no, I totally agree when you're talking about having different finger strength and knowing the limits or like the colors or the abilities of those fingers. For me, I feel more comfortable with my fourth finger, honestly, than I do with something like my first finger in lower positions. Because since I've got kind of bigger hands and bigger fingers, I have to reach back a little bit more with my first finger than I normally would if my fingers were a little more narrow. And so because of that, I feel like my first finger is too much to the side, where my other fingers have a better forward angle. I'm just being picky with myself, but I just find...
this is the important thing to realize, because also something that was hard to understand is that you can visually watch all your favorite violinists or musicians and try your best to think, well, how do I get to sound like them, or how come I don't look like them? And it's not possible to look like many other people doing what they're doing, because their bodies are different. Like, you and I studied with the same teacher, and we have like a lot of similar background of schooling, but when we play, I don't think it's going to exactly look like our hands are not going to look the same at all, because we have different hands. Yeah. The end goal is the same. Your journey getting there might be a little different. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And and another thing interesting about what you're saying with studying with the same teacher with vibrato and things like that, while we do have very different vibratos, we still have the ability to utilize them in the same way, because our teacher, Dr. Olshafka, if you're watching, was really good at instilling in us that you really need to have all different types, so that you can have every tool in your tool bag, so you can pull out the right thing at the right time. And so that's a hallmark of all his students, is that they all generally have an excellent understanding of how to use that tool.
Yeah.
Okay.
We didn't see the third finger.
Yes. Going back to the video now, let's see if this third finger is way different or not. A lot more motion.
Yeah, and I feel like he or she started backwards this time as opposed to forward.
Once again, you have eagle vision. I didn't quite catch it. Let me see it again. Whoops. Not enough. It was a little backward motion before, but it was much more even than the first time. Interesting. Okay, well, those were the videos that I found. Now, I understand, Mr. Evans, you have found another video, and I want to see if I can find what her name is. This is from violinlab.com. Anyway, we'll put a link in the later. If you guys are interested in the videos, we'll have links to everything we watched today. But this is a violinist who has a really great phantom camera and is a very well-trained masterclass style lecturer at, I forget which university it is. I don't want to say the wrong thing. It'll come to me later. Anyway, let's check out a little bit of what she has to say and see her vibrato a little bit.
Okay, so we're going to start with the first finger, and we're going to do the different fingers, different speeds. So hopefully you'll get a lot from this video.
Okay, so here's the first finger. See what we got.
So this side shot gives a nice view of that first knuckle joint. And you can see how flexible it is. And this is something that's too difficult to see with your own hand while you're playing. In the slow motion clip on the left, you can see just how relaxed and flattened.
See, with her video, with her slow motion rather, and with her motion, I feel like
go back a little
before she starts vibrato, she's...
Thanks for the arrow tip.
She's just here, and then you can see the first digit of her finger. Her first little digit becomes completely flat and then goes back to standing position. She's never coming forward towards her nail. She's like arched, I guess is a word we could use, and then flattened, and then arched, and then flattened, right?
Yeah.
I like what she does, and she covers the entire surface area of the digit of her finger to get like the full wave.
Yeah, and I really want to piggyback on that, because that's something that I teach my students, is that it's not this automatic finger drop thing. It's this idea of when you're coming back, it collapses, but then it comes right back and it forms this shape. It's not a forward action, it's a reactionary thing.
It has to be flexible.
Yeah. All right, let's see what they have to say about this.
Here's a closer view of the first finger. And there's no audio because the camera doesn't capture audio when the slow motion feature is enabled, but that's good. It gives you the opportunity just to focus on the movement. In this next clip, I want you to see a don't. And I see this frequently with students who grasp the neck, who maintain contact between the inside of the hand and the neck of the instrument. And this completely restricts the movement of the vibrato, almost precluding a vibrato motion with the finger. So
I'm going to move us over here.
Whoop. Is what happens. And you can barely detect a vibrato. Notice how restricted the motion is. The inside of the hand is hugging to the neck, which anchors the hand and doesn't allow the knuckle to move.
Okay, so I love that she's talking about this, and absolutely agree. But it's kind of bothersome that she didn't demonstrate with the same note, because she started with first finger G string, and she's demonstrating with low 1 E string. And so, like, this is very different, and what you would do with the neck is very different. So, like, it's...
Yeah. No, I agree, and that's something that is worth talking about, because one of the things, when we start playing some vibrato for you here in a little bit, and we explore the difference between violin and viola vibrato, the thickness of strings, not just between instruments, but within your instrument, makes a difference. So that's, as violinists, you know, we are a little bit of a disadvantage to somebody like violists is being aware of those kinds of things, because they have to physically feel that response in their bow, because it takes a little longer to get that C string. And while it does take longer for us to get the G string, we take for granted how quickly our D, A, and E will respond. And so sometimes we just don't think about those things. But you're exactly right. It would be nice to see if she had done the same finger on the same string, just to see a little bit more of...
Yeah, to prove her point. Because I think that if you're playing...
Because I think she's right. Like,
she's absolutely right. Yeah. She's absolutely right. It's just that to play on G string, you are approaching holding the neck of your instrument in a different way than maybe you would do E string. We'll see when we play.
We will see.
It's so... Her second finger is so wide. Her vibrato.
Oh, here we go.
Wide range of motion with the second finger.
Yeah, but you see, now that we're on the second or third finger, I'm sure we'll see. It's this rebalancing in the middle idea, as opposed to it being so back. Now you've got that anchor.
And then the hand swings back and forth around that center. Now, along the same
this goes back to also how different every
don't.
finger is. If I remember correctly from watching some more of the video, I love the way her first and third finger look. I don't like the way that second finger looks, in that if I saw that as my first example of vibrato, I would be confused at it, because the motion she has to do to create it is very, very different from the first finger, and very different from what I have to do. So it's like a really good example to be able to go back to. Everybody's different, and there's different ways of approaching it, and we have to find the way that works best for you to get like the most well-rounded wave, not something sporadic, and make sure that you're not tense while doing it.
Yeah. Okay, this next video that we want to show you is from a professor at UNT, a very wonderful professor, Julia Bushkova, and she has put together a really great, really whole collection, a whole YouTube channel of really excellent videos that do teaching all sorts of different exercises and techniques and styles, from more beginner to very advanced. And so these are things that you don't even have to go to, everybody should want to go to UNT, but you can get this for free on YouTube. So you guys should go check this out afterwards. But here's a video of her talking about how she is using and working on developing wrist vibrato. And this is an exercise that she uses for that.
You need to see that your student or yourself, if you would like to do it, that you do exactly the same knocking motion, but only with this part of the hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I will do 5 motions and I will stop. Stopping is important. Let our brain to be able to comprehend what's going on. So again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I will also do the reverse, that knocking. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. With some people, it's easier to feel the forward motion.
I really like that. I'm going to stop that for a second, because she hit on 2 really good things in there. One, she talked about this idea of only doing 5. and then stopping and resetting yourself so that you can do it again and have that motion. That pause, that little fraction of a second is so important to allow yourself to not only isolate what you're working on, but give yourself a time to have feedback. Like, if you're doing this exercise, if you don't stop, how are you going to know? Well, did I get all 5? Were they even? Was I super relaxed with my wrist? Was I tight anywhere? Did I? You got to think about it for a second, or at least have some reflection on it.
I think that's an essential step to any kind of practicing, maybe for lots of different things in life. You could probably apply it to sports, I'm sure. But if you're practicing an instrument, it makes lots of sense to give yourself, let me play 4 notes, A, B, C, D, E, or 5, and then take a break, and then review. Did I do well? Did I not do well? What do I need to fix about that? What do I need to do again? Do it again. Too many students will do and just keep going and going, and I'm guys, what are we accomplishing here? Yeah. We have to make sure that we take a break and give yourself a time to reflect and decide to yourself, okay, was that successful? And if it was successful, replicate it. Yeah. So yeah, I love that. It's very important to include little pauses.
Yeah, those little things, really, really great.
And some people are better in feeling the backward motion. In fact, in vibrato, there are 2 motions. And again, here I would really stand by the Russian school method, and not method, actually the Russian school thinking, which, by the way, recently has been approved and confirmed by the research. And the research showed that nobody really vibrates from the note up or from the note down, or below the note. Actually, any good vibrato involves going around the stem, which is your note. So having both movements involved is very important. Not only the backward down motion and
That's
not
cool.
only the
See?
upward motion, of course.
I've never heard anybody positively talk about moving forward. Yeah. That's nice. I love it.
No, I like that too.
Or the other, or both. So we go to the knocking. I would stay on that stage, especially with the younger students, sometimes with the older students, for a long time, maybe a week, 2 weeks, maybe even 3 weeks, until we see that this movement is very free, that nothing gets tied anywhere here.
Okay, so did you catch that? 3 weeks. She would be she's saying with new students that are learning this. And I've cut in here, 3 or 4 minutes into the video when we started. She was prefacing this by teaching vibrato for the very first time. Like little kids, let's say you're 5, 6, 7 years old, and you've been playing for
anybody for the first time.
Anybody for the first time can do this.
Vibrato.
Yes, and her whole point is if you use this method, then you're going to get yourself in a really good path, no matter where you are in your study. But yeah, this whole idea of doing the tapping and then doing this checking and going back through, really.
Yeah, I learned from the viola studio here, or it was reinforced with the viola studio here, that we need to think of vibrato as a release of tension. And I didn't get this at first because I think when you're first learning vibrato and you see it being done, it looks like you have to add more muscles to do everything that you do, right? So like if you're just holding your note versus doing this, your brain automatically thinks like I have to be doing a lot. But no muscles should be flexing while we're playing ever. And if you're doing vibrato and you can feel how active your muscles here are, you're doing it in the wrong way.
Yep.
If anything, you should be coming from your framed position to less framed. I mean, less stiff maybe, just being more like jelly about it, allowing your hand to move as much as it can because it's a release of tension to get a wave. Yeah. You want to have like a jelly feeling through your whole arm. And
going back to what you were saying earlier, the sports analogy, which I love. I love the sports analogy for so many reasons because it's just absolutely the truth. You look at how, a soccer team, a baseball team, football team, anybody, how they train. They don't just play, scrimmage game after scrimmage game every day. No, they go and do sprints, then they go and they work out, and they take care of their bodies, and they have a diet, and then they have a sleep regimen. They have this whole tailored plan for how to better themselves at their sport.
And little by little. Nothing happens right away.
No, and they isolate the things that they need to work on, and then that is how they elevate their game to the next level. It is exactly the same. And so being able to not only identify that is an important quality in practice, but to be able to start to put that into your practice, oh my goodness, just makes huge amounts Huge amount.
It's also better for your mental health to give yourself a
break. Oh my goodness, yes. Because you get better faster, and then, you know, you can be, because we're all, you know, critical of ourselves when we're trying to improve, but it's nice to take a break, not have hypertension. Okay, we'll hear a little bit more of this.
And the rest, and that people don't do anything of this nature, which will be like going 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. There's no 1, 2, there's one oscillation at a time, and that oscillation counts as one unit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's going and returning, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? After that, after it's clear that this is it's tuk, this is the hardest part. The hardest part is to transfer the up and down knocking motion to the sliding motion, and that's when a lot of people take more time. Again, when we transfer it, I ask my students to feel exactly the same way as you were doing this. No, now you will be going it in a slightly different direction. So the finger could be either placed in between the strings very lightly, or on the top of one string, whichever, doesn't matter. D sometimes A, usually one of those middle two, and just transfer the movement. So again, we're touching here. Oh. We're not leaving. Don't go.
I'm gonna wait till she gets back in that position here because I want to point something out. Okay, so even though she's teaching vibrato, and this is again designed for anybody to be learning from any level, she's up in position, and not even really in a position. She's just up past what would normally be 5th position for a violin or a viola, and she has her hand up there. And I was thinking about that, and I'm wondering if that is because she wants to make sure that you keep that good hand frame when you're trying to learn this motion, because she was talking about just now transferring this knocking motion into this sideways motion and how that could be difficult for people. I had always started with that sideways motion, and I had heard about the knocking exercises, but that had never been part of my teaching, so I had never really explored that or used that. But I don't know, what do you think about that? Do you think that's important to really think about your hand frame in that way?
Well, I think she's there specifically in this position because the violin shoulder stops her, and so she has like a home base, something to anchor onto, right? So then she can do the motion. Whereas if you tried it in first, there's nothing really stopping you from making the wrong motion. The shoulder helps her make the correct motion. And I think what the first goal is and should be for us teachers towards students is getting the motion correct and making sure that we're doing this simple thing. Like if everybody at home just puts their hand up and then lets their hand fall back, put their arm up, let your hand fall back and then let it be floppy. Like this is basically what she's teaching, right? She wants you to be able to do this without straining any muscles, without doing any extra work. So the first motion is teach no tension, which I think that's exactly what she's doing. I, however, learned, because I could only do arm vibrato in the beginning of my playing, and because that's what I kind of learned first, the technique for vibrato that I learn and that I teach for arm vibrato is a little different. I start with the sliding thing too, because I teach my kids like a combination of a vibrato and a shift exercise where I'm having them do this. They're traveling along the fingerboard the whole time. So this is making them slide, but this is also incorporating the whole arm. And then we narrow it down until it becomes to a certain spot. Whereas she is starting from the opposite side where she's making just a wrist motion. So this is going to be wrist vibrato for sure in the beginning. And then later it would transfer to, like she said, the slide, which might come into arm vibrato later. So it's just a different approach, I think.
Different approach, yeah. Okay, well, I think that's a pretty good introduction to the idea of what vibrato is and kind of, a couple different ideas on how it's executed and how can people practice. And again, these videos, we'll post these in the links afterwards if you guys want to check them out to see how this all works. And I really highly recommend this Julie Bushkova video. It's really, really excellent. And she has a ton of stuff on her channel. But yeah, at this point, we had one funny example that we wanted to show you guys that is an example of vibrato gone extreme. Yeah. Extreme is going to be the word I use.
Let's listen to the video and then we'll talk about it.
Yeah, let's just check it out. We're going to hear a little bit of Paganini, and this is
Paganini Violin Concerto.
And her name is Anna Karkowska.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Let's get here now.
Challenge, a lot of repertoire, very contrasting, extremely beautiful music.
Wait, one more. Wow.
Whew. That's some intense vibrato.
That's vibrato.
Now, to be fair to her, while that is an authentic style of how she plays vibrato, she was doing a little bit of that on purpose because that was part of a piece that she was commissioned to do. Part of this, I think it's the London Symphony. This was several years ago, maybe 8 or 10 years ago. And so this was another piece that she was playing, but that real extreme vibrato that she had been working on bled into the peg.
Yes.
Mr. Evans was like, you could say that.
So, I personally do not like at all the way that she's vibratoing. If she was using this for just normal classical pieces, or you know, the traditional way of playing violin would not include this kind of vibrato. But beyond that, her own interpretation of something, her own piece, her own sound, her own unique sound, that's what she's doing it for. She has a sound. And it's kind of like if somebody was singing, and instead of singing like an opera singer, they decided to do death metal one day or do heavy metal one day. They went for a sound, she got her own sound, and it's cool. So for that, she deserves respect, and everybody has to, again, it comes back to everybody has a different approach, a different way to get to their end destination, and everybody has a very unique voice. So I would never listen to her for fun, but I do appreciate what she's doing because...
I'm 100, man, I couldn't have said it better. You know, there's so many things in not just the music world, but the art world, you know, and just the world in general, that are completely wonderful, awesome, valid things that are just not for me.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And it's just exactly like you said. I've known many wonderful musicians throughout, you know, studying, and I've seen people who've had the same undergraduate degree in vocal performance. Some of them, exactly like you said, go study opera. And I know one guy who moved to St. Louis to join a punk rock band. But man, he sings so well.
Yeah, and he probably has an amazing voice, right?
It's so good because he's got that classical edge training.
Yes, he's using his tool in a different way,
Yeah.
which I think is what she's doing and which is what we've been talking about. Exactly. You have to have a tool. You have to know how to use it in different spots, in different ways, and that's really cool. Her sound...
Well, on that note, before we get too much more into her sound, let's check in for a second and see how you guys are all doing on the chat here while we switch things up a little bit. And we're going to show you a little bit of how we play our vibrato, and we're going to go back and forth and also do some different instruments. And then we'll do a little bit of playing stuff at the end here if we have some time. We'll see a little ahead of schedule or behind schedule, however that works. I forget.
They're talking about Beethoven 9, yes.
Okay, please read my joke.
Oh, wait. Just kidding.
Let me make sure this is Okay, a stranger walks past Beethoven's grave and hears a ninth symphony coming from his grave, so he calls the priest. The priest listens, he hears the ninth, then the eighth, and so on. Then he says, "Don't worry, he's just decomposing." I like that kind of stuff, man. Okay, here's a good one for you. This is one from my mom from way back in the day. What do you... Hold on, how do you say this? What do you call a small elf that rides the subway?
Okay, what?
A metronome.
Oh my gosh. I do like that.
I think that was really good. Shout out to my mom. Okay, one more. Then we're going to actually do stuff. What happens... Yeah, what happens when you throw a piano down a mine shaft? Or what sound? What sound is a piano going down a mine shaft?
Sadness. But what?
A flat minor.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's a pretty good one. Okay. So with that one now, we're going to go ahead and get some stuff all set up and get our instrument out. So, Mr. Elijah, while I'm changing some things around here, go ahead and talk to me. What do you want to start with? Do you want to do violin or do you want to do viola?
Violin.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and switch the camera over here and bring this up a little bit. Sorry, everybody, if you hear some horrible microphone sounds. Okay. Good. So I'll have you take a little bit of a step forward here so we can both be in that shot. Good. So I'll let you go ahead and, how do you want to do this? Do you want to do a one octave scale? Do you just want to do individual fingers like we were talking about earlier?
I'm curious to see, like, what is your general first approach of, let's try to learn vibrato for the first time.
Let's try to learn vibrato for the first time.
What are
Okay.
some simple techniques that you do?
Yeah. Okay, let me go ahead and
Simple is a very
pull this in a
word.
little bit.
Could be simple, could not be simple.
Could be simple, could not be simple. Yeah, we'll see. Well, here are some of the things that I like to start with. First thing, like you said, about looseness is super, super important. I always want to make sure before I teach this to any of my students that they have a really nice hand frame that has a relaxed back of the wrist, and I can see them lifting and dropping fingers without a ton of extra activity. Because one of the biggest things that's going to get in the way of vibrato, as you said, is tension and holding on way too tight. So if I'm seeing, extra motion and stuff like that, I really try to make sure that that is something that they're not having as much problems with anymore. But once the actual motion starts, I try to explain it by having them keep their finger down. In fact, let me just go ahead and show you.
Oh, yes, teach me.
Yes.
Okay, I'll be over here.
Okay, so go ahead and put your hand down. Yeah.
Which finger are we doing?
We're going to do the third finger. So I'm going to have you get your thumb in the nice position that you like to have it in, and go ahead and walk up 1, 2, 3 for me. Good. So now that you've got that third finger on a nice finger pad, let's see if we can see that there. Good, I'll get my hands out of the way. So then what I would do is I would take the instrument, normally my students are not so tall, and I put the scroll against my chest, hold their third finger down, tell them to relax, and then I manually, by lightly holding their wrist and the back of their forearm, will move this forward and backwards, trying to show this collapsing, if you can just do it without me holding your finger, that collapsing motion of the finger and how that comes from the wrist and the arm, not from the finger. Because I do occasionally have students who can do that crazy finger ability, I'm going to sneak in front of you now, where they do this.
Oh, yes, that's nice.
Yeah, and they're just like, I'm vibrating! It's just like, no.
Yeah. It's such a similar motion, though. I completely understand why somebody would be confused by this, because you're still collapsing the finger. It's just a different way of collapsing.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's how I was started. So.
Okay, well,
as far as just the idea.
I think I give my kids usually immediately two ideas. So we have to make sure we're not tense, and we have to talk about, like, okay, there's wrist vibrato and there's arm vibrato. So I also tell my kids always that it should be fun to practice this because you get to annoy everybody at home. So just like Ms. Pushkova was doing, just like we've talked about, the first exercise I always teach is get anchored in by the shoulder, right? And then usually we use third finger first or second finger just because it's right there. And you want to be able to go back and forth without leaving. Right here, you're going to, stay anchored to...
So I'm supposed to have my normal hand frame and just come up until I touch?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, and
Stop
now
yourself
from
at the
here...
shoulder, place a finger. And we don't have to hear a pitch.
And it doesn't matter for the pitch. Okay,
yeah.
so just the
and
third.
then you just go back and forth. And it's, again, you're collapsing, you're covering the surface area of your finger back and forth. And if you a really diligent person would make themselves start at the normal hand frame pitch and go all the way down and go all the way back up really slowly. Yeah, it's like
that's weird.
You have to release and you have to fall back, kind of. But this has to be anchored against the shoulder of the instrument.
Is it not? Isn't this what I did?
We're not showing you a really good angle, guys. Okay, so let's see.
Here, let me get this microphone out of the shoulder. There we go. Okay. So I've got my hand frame. I'm bringing it
here. Maybe you're gonna have to make it a little higher than normal. I think.
Higher, like that.
Yes, just a little bit, so that you have room to fall back and go forward. So
okay, because I really feel I'm gonna crank my back.
Now,
I'm collapsing.
because
so
Mr. McKamie's
much.
knuckles should be aligned with the fingerboard. So like that's how you would know if you're too high or too low. Stay aligned with the fingerboard, and then you just allow yourself.
That
to go
makes
back
more
and go
sense.
forward and go back
That
and go
makes more sense. Okay, so I had to adjust for me since I have a big hand a
again,
little bit lower.
different size hands.
Yeah.
So we would start super slow, and you need to do like quarter note, and then little by little speed it up, right? This is one, and eventually you're going from super slow to something like what Miss Bashova was showing us. The other thing that I like to teach everybody, again, because you can have fun knowing everybody at home, is like shifting and sliding. So you could do, let's say we're practicing from third position to first position, second finger. This is again assuming we start really slow. Da, 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 and then build up, but I'm going to speed it up right now. So you start big. It doesn't entirely matter what the pitches are. Then you go faster. And you're just using harmonic weight so that you can slide up and down. And little by little, you narrow the space that you're doing. I started off with 3 positions, right? Narrow it down. Faster, more narrow, until you get to some center pitch. So those two things, like a really slidey noisy thing, or a really... Just because it's fun to practice.
That is fun. I'm going to say that again, just in case you couldn't hear everything that Mr. Evans was saying there with him playing and talking at the same time. So with this sliding idea, you're trying to imitate that motion that you're going to have with your arm.
If you do arm vibrato, yes.
If you do, so this is a different
two
thing.
things. The first one is practice this one because we're learning in a wrist vibrato kind of way, and then practice this one because it's shifting and because it's arm vibrato kind of way.
Yeah.
So you can utilize both, and then I usually from there we determine which one fits this student more. Yeah. Because some people do better with this, and some people do better with this.
Very true. And I like that because you're doing the 2 birds with 1 stone idea because you're also reinforcing good hand frame with the shifting. So anyway, after you get that, he's saying that then what you want to do is as you're getting that wonderful slide sound, you want to try to take that and evenly shorten it down. And that then would provide a vibrato. Now, I have not practiced this. Let's see if I can do it.
So for the starting goal, like, okay, think. You're going to do quarter, E, C sharp, and then as you get faster, doing maybe eighths or triplets, you're going to do E flat to D or something. You just narrow it down until you get to, like, center pitch D.
Some pitch.
Yeah. Harmonic weight.
What?
Use harmonic weight just to practice going back and forth.
What do you mean, harmonic weight?
Right now, you're pushing and actually creating pitch.
Oh!
We're supposed to be able to be traveling this freely on our instrument.
Okay, that free. Okay, so I am so loose now. I'm only touching the strings. I'm not even really touching the wood.
Because you just want to glide along up and down.
So it's a gliding
At
thing.
the end, when you've gotten to the last part, you will play a pitch. Yeah, and then the last thing the last thing I always say is pretend like there's a dot of super glue. If you've ever had super glue on your skin, you know it's pretty good. There's a reason it's called super glue. Pretend you have a super glue dot and that you're just trying to get away from that super glue dot. After you've arrived to your pitch.
Disclaimer: I don't want to hear. I don't want to see any emails. I don't want to hear about this from anybody putting super. Oh, I heard McKamie Masterclass told me super glue.
Pretend.
Mental exercise. This is a visualizing thing. But yes, I like that. Too much. Because they have to be loose.
Harmonic weight, loose back and forth.
I like that because I'm like what you say. I use a combination of both, and I think mostly I tilt towards an arm vibrato, but right as the end, even though all I was doing was arm,
feel it a little, right?
I felt it, and I felt my wrist wanting to kind of wiggle too. And then when I started vibrating, and it really was going in, I was like,
"It's good because what you're practicing is being loose, and then changing one thing about being loose, putting a pitch down. So you still have to be like this, and essentially that means your whole hand has to be like doing a wave, a flexible thing. Yeah. Your vibrato starts from the tip of your finger and goes through the entire hand.
I agree. Yeah. No, that's good. Good. I like that. I'm gonna take.
We should try both.
I'm gonna take.
I'm gonna try it too.
Okay. Good. Well, let's see here. A good piece that we had talked about was doing the Bach double because that second movement has a really, really nice, beautiful slow section. And a little later here, I think, we've got unfortunately, our roommates here, Miss Courtney and Mr. Rios have been teaching lessons, and Mr. Zoltan is back home. He's teaching lessons online today too. But I'm thinking Mr. Rios might join us later here at the end if we have some time to do a piece. We'll see if we have time at the end. But for right now, let's do a little bit of that.
Let's do buck double. Yeah. Yes, but I should also say, guys, when I teach my kids vibrato and I tell them, have fun annoying everybody at home with this, you should only practice something like that for 2 or 3 minutes at a time. The exercise, starts slow and then goes faster and faster and faster. After you've done it once, give yourself a break, because if you're consistently doing you're going to drive yourself crazy, you're going to drive everybody crazy, and you're not entirely teaching everybody and teaching yourself something. You have to give yourself time, like we said before, to practice, to assess, did I think that was successful, do I need to change something, and then do it again. Don't just consistently do this, because you won't really make any progress with this.
Okay. So, and one more thing, because I did not forget about all of my viola brothers and sisters.
Oh yeah.
Let's just do 1 second of showing some of the differences of viola, just because it's a little bit more important to be really relaxed and to have that smooth back and forward motion, because we need more finger pad, we need a slightly bigger motion, and I feel like you can get a deeper range with the viola as far as the lower notes, as far as how wide you can vibrate and have it still sound really nice. Now, unfortunately, my poor viola has a rattle on it right now. The C string. It's a little sad. See what you think. As far as what we talked about, all this violin stuff, what are you feeling different now as you're trying to vibrate on a viola?
For my viola students, I still teach both exercises, but I tell them that as violists they'll need this one more, because this is also teaching some sort of center of rebalance, sorry, because you're anchored here and you're going back and forth, and you have to keep this motion, this center, while going on each side, right? Yeah. And violists need this a lot more than violinists do, because they have so much more material to work with. The viola's bigger, so you have to create a wider vibrato, which means using more surface area of your finger. So I think this exercise is a really good start for the violist before necessarily this one. Yeah. But yes, it's so much more area to work with. It's a bigger instrument. You have to do bigger motions, but that shouldn't mean more tension. If anything, it means even less tension.
Exactly.
Mobility is key.
Okay. Trade your spots. And then this goes here.
Did you mean these spots?
And then this goes here. I just meant the...
well, whatever. Now we changed.
Okay, whatever. You get the solo at the beginning.
Oh, I guess you wanted that. Sorry.
And your A, please. Ooh, I like that. That I don't like as much. I'm kidding. Let's do, we got time. Let's play. It's beautiful. Everybody likes a little Bach double. We just need a harpsichord player and a string orchestra.
And a stage.
Church. Yes.
A concert hall.
And a time machine. Okay. And we are now going to remember that there's a camera. You gotta come in, my man. Like that. Yeah. There we go. And I'll just scoot this back too. Boop. There we go. We almost know what we're doing. No, that's right. Oh,
that's okay.
I want everyone to hear you.
Oh yeah, that's what's more important.
There you go. Now you'll just hit it with your bow a whole bunch. It'll be fun. Okay.
Okay, so Bach double, second movement.
was so conflicted at the end because I wanted to not vibrato, but this whole day was about vibrating. So it's like, I'll vibrate a little bit.
For Bach, you would not always vibrate as much as.
Oh, welcome to an argument.
Yeah. But anyway, we used different kinds of vibratos throughout the whole thing. We were exploring some.
But I felt like we started really on the back half. We were matching much better, starting to, get our staccatos, our short notes, our smooth notes, our phrasing was coming out a little bit more. Because I know at the beginning I was stressing out a little bit like, are there E flats? No. Yes? No. Accidental? Huh? Yes? No. Like, whew.
I hope we don't get copyrighted for that one, right? Couldn't we?
That'd be nice. Man, if we get...
Oh, okay, so it's only if it sounds a certain
Okay, so here's a good little story while we're going to see if Mr. Rios is done with his lessons. We'll see if he's done. Yep, looks like he is. You want to go ahead and pull out the terzetto? Sure. Great. So funny story about that copyright strike we got from the first video we did when we played that Schubert for you guys. We were trying to figure out what was the deal, like why did we, get it, and they finally sent it to me on, what happened, and the snippet of the video was us playing the Schubert, and I was like, well, what in the world, how did we get a copyright strike for the Schubert? And apparently this one 15-second snippet of the recording sounded so good that the YouTube algorithm told him that it was a Croatian string quartet and that we had stolen their music and put it in our video. So we sound like an Eastern European string quartet. Not too bad. I'll take it, Anyhow, did you guys find their terzetto? Or some of it? Ooh, violin 1. Okay. All right, that's one part. Okay, let me get that other little stand here. Whoop. Are we missing something?
We might be There's two violin parts and two violin parts because I have the old and new editions, but not.
So we're looking for a second violin part right now. So for all of you wondering what all the mumbling in the background is, that's what they're looking for. So if we can get this piece, if we have all the parts, this is a Dvorak piece, and it is, the name of it, terzetto, is another name for trio. So 3 people, and it's 2 violins and 1 viola. So it's a really, really cool, it's a wonderful piece. You guys should all go check it out. And I think what we would read for you guys is 1 or 3, which is the first movement is a allegro, and the third movement is a scherzo, which is a quick, and we've got the scherzo trio kind of stuff. So I'm gonna go check in and see what we got over here for the parts.
Page 1 of violin 2 parts, so we could do page 1.
Okay, so we're definitely gonna do page 1 of the first movement. Do we not have anything else for any of the other movements right there? Well, then you get a little bit of taste of the beginning.
But this is, the opening.
Well, that's fine.
This is good.
We'll get a little bit, and we get Mr. Rios gets to make guest appearance. Boom, right in the center. Okay, scoot this in.
Did you adjust this, or can I adjust this?
You can adjust that however you want. Amazon Prime, 2-month delivery.
Let's not maybe go super fast on our 16th.
I like that.
No promises. Okay, no, I won't be. So we're faster than that.
No, it's good.
let me know, Dan.
That's why.
So if you liked that piece, let us know and we'll find the part and we'll do more.
And we'll get more for next week.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, I think that is as good a place as any to end since we're right at the 5 o'clock mark and we have run out of parts. So, anyway, yeah, thanks for hanging out, guys. Be sure to let us know if you have any ideas for pieces you want to hear, or masterclass ideas, moving the camera around, all those kinds of fun. I'm teasing. Anyway, you guys have a great